The sun hung low in the late afternoon sky, casting long shadows across the quiet street. Birds chirped their final songs of the day, and the soft rustle of leaves filled the air. It was the perfect evening for a stroll, but as usual, the neighborhood felt oddly still. At number 42, the house stood tall and uninviting. Its white paint was chipped, and the shutters hung lopsided. It was the kind of place that could easily be overlooked. Yet it was the one house that held the most intrigue in the neighborhood. Nobody ever saw the occupant. The mail piled up. The grass grew wild. Neighbors often wondered who lived there. Some assumed it was an elderly person who preferred solitude. Others believed it was merely a vacant property. But the truth was far more unsettling. It was late September when things began to change. The leaves were just starting to turn, splashing shades of orange and red across the landscape. There was a chill in the air, hinting at the impending winter. That's when I first noticed the small flicker of light in the window of number 42. It was just a brief flash, like a candle flickering in the dark. I brushed it off at first, thinking it was just my imagination playing tricks on me. After all, I had lived next door for 2 years without ever seeing anyone. Yet that small flicker nagged at me. Days passed and the light appeared again. This time it lingered a bit longer. I found myself glancing toward the house more often, wondering if I might catch a glimpse of the mysterious neighbor. But the curtains remained drawn and the outside world continued to be ignored. Curiosity piqued, I decided to take a different approach. I began to pay attention to the sounds coming from number 42. At first, there were just soft thuds, like something heavy being moved. Then I heard a scraping sound, almost rhythmic, like a shovel against dirt. It was strange, but I shrugged it off as maintenance work. One evening, as I was watering my plants, I noticed a figure through the window. It was silhouetted against the faint glow of a lamp. I couldn't make out any distinct features, but the posture was unmistakable. It was a person, but they moved with an odd hesitance. Each motion seemed deliberate yet cautious, as if they were unsure of their surroundings. My heart raced. I felt compelled to find out more. I knocked on the door one Saturday afternoon, hoping to introduce myself. I waited, my hand hovering over the bell, but the silence that followed was deafening. After a few minutes, I turned to leave, but something stopped me. A noise echoed from within. It was muffled but unmistakable. A voice raised in anger. It was a sharp contrast to the calm I had anticipated. I hesitated, my instincts telling me to walk away. But curiosity won out, and I lingered a moment longer. I strained to hear what was being said. The words were unclear, but the tone was unmistakable. Frustration mixed with sadness. I felt an overwhelming urge to help. What if this person was in trouble? But what could I do? I was just a neighbor. That night, I couldn't shake the encounter from my mind. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, imagining the life behind those closed doors. Who were they? Why did they never come outside? The question swirled around my mind like autumn leaves caught in a gust of wind. The next day, a storm rolled in. Heavy rain pounded against the rooftops, and the wind howled through the trees. I watched from my window as the downpour drenched the neighborhood, the kind of weather that kept people inside, warm and cozy, but it also created an eerie feeling of isolation. As the storm raged on, I noticed the flicker of light in number 42 again. This time, it was accompanied by the sound of something crashing. My heart raced as I watched, anxiety gripping me. I couldn't take it any longer. I grabbed my raincoat and hurried outside. The rain fell in sheets, soaking me to the bone as I approached the house. I knocked on the door, shouting over the wind. "Hello? Is anyone there?" My voice trembled slightly, but I pressed on. The crashing sound had stopped, replaced by an unsettling silence. Just as I turned to leave, the door creaked open a few inches. My breath caught in my throat. "Hello?" I called again. The door slowly opened wider, revealing a dimly lit hallway. I could barely make out the figure standing just beyond the threshold. "Can I help you?" The voice was soft, almost hesitant. It belonged to a woman, her hair disheveled and her clothes rumpled. But there was something in her eyes, an intensity that held me captive. "I live next door," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "I saw the light and thought you might need help." She hesitated, glancing back into the shadows of her home. "I'm fine," she said, but there was an edge to her tone. I prefer to be alone." The words hung heavy in the air. I could see the pain behind her eyes, the weight of something unspoken. "If you ever need anything, don't hesitate to ask. We're neighbors. We look out for each other," I offered, hoping to bridge the gap between us. She nodded slowly, her gaze still flickering between me and the darkness inside. "Thank you," she murmured, and with that she closed the door. I stood there for a moment, rain streaming down my face. I felt a mix of relief and concern. I had made contact, but it was clear that this woman was guarding something. The storm raged on, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I had only scratched the surface. Days turned into weeks. The rain cleared and autumn settled in. The leaves crunched underfoot and the air was crisp. Yet the mystery of my neighbor lingered. I continued to notice the flickers of light at odd hours. Sometimes I could hear muffled voices, but they never revealed their secrets. One evening, as I was walking my dog, I saw the woman standing on her porch, looking out at the street. It was the first time I had seen her outside. My heart raced with excitement, but I also felt a pang of apprehension. "Hey," I called, waving cautiously. "Nice to finally see you." She turned, a flicker of surprise crossing her face. "Oh, hello," she replied, her voice barely audible over the rustling leaves. We exchanged a few pleasantries, and I learned her name was Sarah, but as we talked, I noticed a tension in her posture. It was as if she were constantly on guard, waiting for something to happen. I wanted to reach out, to help her, but I didn't know how. As we chatted, something caught my eye, a shadow darting behind the trees across the street. My heart skipped a beat. I squinted, trying to make out the figure. It was quick, almost furtive. I turned back to Sarah, but her gaze was fixed on the same spot. "Did you see that?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly. She nodded slowly, her expression darkening. "I have," she replied, her voice low. "It's been happening for weeks. I thought it was just my imagination." My stomach churned. "What do you mean?" She hesitated, biting her lip. "I don't think I'm safe. Someone's been watching me. I can feel it." Panic surged through me. "Have you called the authorities?" I asked, my voice urgent. "No," she whispered. "I can't. They wouldn't understand." A chill ran down my spine. I could see the fear in her eyes, and I felt a surge of protectiveness. "You're not alone in this. Let me help you," I urged. But Sarah shook her head. "I can't drag you into this. It's my problem, not yours." There was a finality in her tone that left no room for argument. The days that followed were filled with dread. I kept a watchful eye on number 42, and the shadow seemed to loom larger with each passing night. I noticed it lurking, darting between trees and streetlights, always just out of sight. I couldn't shake the feeling that danger was closing in. One evening, after a particularly long day, I was sitting on my porch when a loud crash echoed from Sarah's house. My heart raced as I jumped to my feet. Without thinking, I rushed toward her home, my instincts kicking in. I knocked frantically on the door, my heart pounding. "Sarah, are you okay?" I shouted. Silence followed and fear gripped me. I pushed the door open, finding it ajar, the interior shrouded in darkness. "Sarah," I called again, stepping inside. The air was thick with tension. I could hear the faint sound of something shifting behind a closed door at the end of the hallway. With every step, my heart pounded louder. I approached the door, my hand trembling as I reached for the knob. I took a deep breath and turned it slowly. The room was empty, but the window was wide open, curtains billowing in the wind. I felt a cold breeze wash over me. Sarah, I called desperately. Just then, I heard a noise coming from the basement, a low rhythmic thumping. My instinct screamed at me to turn back, to leave this place filled with shadows, but I couldn't abandon her. I took a deep breath and moved toward the basement door. The stairs creaked beneath my weight as I descended into the darkness. The thumping grew louder, echoing in the confined space. I stepped cautiously, my heart racing. Sarah? I called again, my voice barely above a whisper. I reached the bottom and found myself in a dimly lit room. Boxes were strewn about and the air was musty. The thumping had stopped. I felt a sense of dread wash over me. Then I saw her. Sarah was huddled in the corner, her face pale and drawn. What happened? I asked, rushing to her side. She looked up at me, her eyes wide with fear. I don't know, I thought I was safe. Her voice trembled as she spoke, but I heard them. They were right outside. Before I could respond, a loud crash echoed from above. My heart dropped. We needed to get out. I grabbed her hand, pulling her to her feet. We have to go. Now. As we sprinted up the stairs, the door slammed shut behind us. Panic surged through my veins as I fumbled with the knob, but it wouldn't budge. It's locked, I exclaimed, glancing back at Sarah. Her eyes were wide with terror. We have to find another way out, she cried, her voice rising in panic. I scanned the room, searching for an escape route. The window. I rushed to it, but it was sealed shut. I turned back, adrenaline coursing through me. We need to break it. Just as I was about to throw a nearby chair, I heard footsteps above us. Heavy, deliberate steps. My blood ran cold. They're here, I whispered, my voice barely escaping my throat. We huddled together, hearts racing. The footsteps grew louder, moving toward the staircase. We need to hide, I urged, pulling her toward a pile of boxes. We crouched down, holding our breaths. The footsteps stopped at the top of the stairs. I know you're down there, a deep voice called, echoing through the darkness. You can't hide from me. My heart pounded in my chest as fear coursed through me. Who was this person? What did they want? I glanced at Sarah, and she looked back at me, her eyes filled with fear and determination. Suddenly, the sound of splintering wood filled the air. The door was being forced open. I grabbed Sarah's hand tightly, ready to fight if necessary. The darkness enveloped us, but I could feel the tension rising. The door swung open, revealing a figure silhouetted against the dim light. My breath caught in my throat. It was a man, but his face was obscured by shadows. Come out now, he commanded, his voice deep and menacing. I felt Sarah tremble beside me. What do you want? I shouted, trying to keep my voice steady. Leave us alone. The man laughed, a low, chilling sound. You have something I want? He stepped closer, the light illuminating his face. It was twisted, marked by years of anger and resentment. Who are you? I demanded, stepping protectively in front of Sarah. He smirked, a cruel smile spreading across his face. Just a friend of Sarah's. She's been hiding from me for too long. I felt a rush of anger. You're not her friend, you're a monster. His expression darkened. You should have stayed out of this. Now you'll pay the price. In that moment, something inside me snapped. I couldn't let him hurt her. I grabbed a nearby box and hurled it at him. It struck him in the chest, momentarily stunning him. Run! I yelled at Sarah, pushing her toward the stairs. We sprinted past him, adrenaline fueling our flight. Just as we reached the top, I heard him cursing behind us. The front door was just ahead, and we burst through it, stumbling into the cool night air. We didn't stop running until we reached my house. I slammed the door shut, locking it behind us. My heart raced as I turned to Sarah, who was trembling in fear. "What was that?" I asked, my voice shaky. She looked up at me, tears in her eyes. "He's been watching me for months. I didn't know how to escape." "We need to call the police," I urged, reaching for my phone. But before I could dial, Sarah grabbed my arm. "No, he'll find us." Her voice was filled with panic. "He'll come for me." "Then we need to hide," I said, my mind racing. "We can't let him know where we are." We moved to the back of the house, settling into the shadows. I could hear my heart pounding in my ears, the weight of the situation sinking in. The minutes felt like hours as we waited, listening for any sign of him. I tried to reassure Sarah, but I could see the fear etched on her face. "I thought I was safe," she whispered. "You are now," I promised, though I wasn't entirely sure myself. "We'll figure this out together." As the night wore on, we sat in silence, the darkness pressing in around us. I couldn't shake the feeling that the danger wasn't over. The flickering light from number 42 had drawn us into a web of secrets, and now we were trapped. But as dawn broke, the first rays of sunlight cutting through the darkness, I made a vow. I would protect her, no matter what it took. The battle wasn't over, and the shadows still lurked. But together, we would face whatever came next. The neighbor who never came outside had finally revealed herself, and now we were in this fight together. The neighbor who never came outside. In a quiet suburb, life moved slowly. Children played in the yards, and families gathered for barbecues on warm evenings. But one house stood apart. Number 14, a modest two-story, had a peculiar reputation. The neighbor who lived there never came outside. At first, it was just a curiosity. Mrs. Thompson, who lived next door, often mentioned it in passing. "You know, that poor man hasn't seen the sun in years," she'd say while watering her petunias. The other neighbors would nod, exchanging glances filled with concern. His name was Mr. Hargrove. He moved in 2 years ago, bringing with him a truckload of boxes and an air of mystery. The day he arrived, the neighborhood buzzed with excitement. Who was he? Why had he chosen such a quiet street? Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. Mr. Hargrove remained a ghost in his own home. The curtain stayed drawn, and the porch gathered dust. Occasionally, a shadow would pass by a window, but no one ever saw him. Children would dare each other to sneak up to his fence, peeking through the slats. "Maybe he's a wizard," one would whisper. "Or a vampire," another would giggle. The stories grew, feeding on the imagination of young minds. As time passed, a sense of unease settled over the neighborhood. The whispers grew louder. What was Mr. Hargrove hiding? Why didn't he ever come outside? One rainy afternoon, curiosity got the better of Sarah, a brave 9-year-old who lived across the street. She decided to investigate. She approached the fence, the wood slick with rain. Peering through the slats, she called out, "Mr. Hargrove, are you there?" Silence. She knocked lightly on the gate, her heart racing. Still, there was no response. Disappointed, she turned to leave when she noticed something unusual, a light flickering in the upstairs window. Intrigued, Sarah squinted, trying to see better. The light danced, casting shadows that twisted and turned. It was almost like someone was moving around. She felt a shiver run down her spine. That night, she told her friends. They gathered in her living room, wide-eyed as she recounted her brave mission. "I swear I saw a light. We need to find out what he's doing up there." The next day, a plan was formed. On Saturday, they would all go to the fence. They decided to bring snacks and set up a little camp. They'd wait and see if Mr. Hargrove would finally come out. Saturday dawned bright and sunny. The children arrived at Sarah's house armed with juice boxes and cookies. They marched across the street, giggling and whispering. They gathered near the fence, excitement bubbling in their chests. Hours passed. They exchanged stories, played games, but every few minutes they'd glance at the house. The flickering light persisted, almost dancing in a rhythm only it could hear. As the sun began to dip low, casting long shadows across the street, Sarah's determination grew. We can't just sit here, we have to know what's going on. Her friends hesitated. But what if he's scary? One of them asked. Or mean, another added. But Sarah, emboldened, took a deep breath. We can knock on the door together. With hesitant agreement, the kids approached the front door. Sarah rang the doorbell, her heart pounding in her ears. They waited, the quiet stretching out. Then a voice came from inside. Who is it? The children froze. It was deep, slightly gravelly, and filled with a hint of confusion. It's just us, kids from the neighborhood, Sarah called back, her voice trembling. We wanted to say hi. Silence followed, thick and heavy. They exchanged glances, unsure if they should run or wait. Finally, the door creaked open just a crack, revealing a pair of weary eyes. Mr. Hargrove's face was worn, lined with a sadness that seemed to deepen the shadows beneath his eyes. What do you want? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. We just wanted to meet you, Sarah replied quickly. We see your light all the time. We thought you might want to come outside and play. For a moment, Mr. Hargrove studied them, his expression unreadable. Then he sighed, the sound heavy with resignation. I can't, he said slowly. I'm not feeling well. Disappointment washed over the children. Oh, Sarah replied softly. Okay, but if you ever want to come out, we'd love to have you join us. Mr. Hargrove nodded, and without another word, he closed the door, leaving the children standing in stunned silence. That evening, they returned home, their imaginations buzzing with questions. What did he mean by not feeling well? Why was he so closed off? As days turned into weeks, the children continued to notice the flickering light. They found themselves drawn to it, a strange magnetism pulling them back. They began to wonder if there was more to Mr. Hargrove than they could see. One night a storm rolled in, thunder cracked and rain poured down, drenching the neighborhood. The children huddled together in Sarah's living room, too scared to play outside, but their thoughts kept drifting back to Mr. Hargrove. What if he needs help? One of the kids suggested, his voice shaking with unease. What if he's in trouble? Sarah's heart raced. We should check on him. They grabbed flashlights and raincoats, determined to make sure he was okay. They marched across the street, the wind whipping against them. The house loomed in the darkness, its windows reflecting the flashes of lightning. The kids approached the door, their hearts pounding. Sarah knocked again, this time more urgently. Mr. Hargrove, it's us again. The seconds stretched on, thick with tension. Just as they began to lose hope, the door opened slightly. Mr. Hargrove's face appeared again, but this time he looked more startled. What are you doing out here? He asked, his voice raised over the howling wind. We wanted to make sure you're okay, Sarah shouted back, lifting her flashlight to illuminate her face. It's storming, and we thought you might need help. For a moment there was silence, then Mr. Hargrove's features softened and he stepped into the light. I appreciate that, he said slowly, but I'm really fine, just keeping to myself. The children exchanged glances, sensing the weight of his words. You don't have to be alone, you know, Sarah said softly. We can be friends. A flicker of surprise crossed Mr. Hargrove's face, but it quickly faded. I'm not the kind of person to have friends, he replied, almost wistfully. Everyone needs friends. Another child piped up, emboldened by Sarah's courage. You can come to our games anytime. Mr. Hargrove hesitated. his eyes darting between the children and the safety of his home. "I appreciate your concern," he said, his voice tinged with sadness, "but it's complicated." With that, he closed the door, leaving the children staring at each other, their hearts heavy. They trudged back home, the storm raging around them. Days turned into weeks again, and the flickering light continued, but the children found it harder to ignore the sadness that lingered. They began to brainstorm ways to reach out to Mr. Hargrove without intruding. One evening, they decided to bake cookies. "Everyone loves cookies," Sarah said, her face lit with determination. They spent the afternoon mixing dough, laughing and sneaking bites when they thought no one was looking. Once the cookies were baked, they carefully packaged them in a bright blue box. "This will show him we care," one of the kids declared. They marched across the street, the box of cookies held high. Sarah was at the front, her heart racing. She knocked on the door once more, holding her breath. After a moment, the door creaked open. Mr. Hargrove looked surprised to see them again. "What is it?" he asked, his voice softer this time. "We brought you cookies!" Sarah exclaimed, holding out the box. "Just to say hi and let you know we're here if you need anything." Mr. Hargrove's expression shifted, and for the first time, they saw a hint of a smile. "You made these for me?" he asked, glancing at the box. "Yes," the children chorused. "Please take some." After a moment's hesitation, he took the box, his fingers brushing against Sarah's. "Thank you," he said quietly. I'll try one." That small moment felt monumental. The children beamed, knowing they had made a connection. As they turned to leave, Mr. Hargrove called after them, "Wait!" They turned back, their hearts racing. "Yes?" "If you're serious about that friendship, I could use some help with my garden. It's gotten a bit out of control." The children exchanged excited glances. "We'd love to help," Sarah replied, her voice filled with enthusiasm. And just like that, a door opened. Not just the one to Mr. Hargrove's home, but to the possibility of friendship. In the following weeks, the children visited regularly, bringing more cookies and helping with the garden. They learned about plants, flowers, and the joys of nurturing something together. Mr. Hargrove shared stories of his life, slowly revealing the man who had once been a shadow in their neighborhood. As they worked side by side, the laughter and joy filled the air. Mr. Hargrove began to emerge from his self-imposed isolation, finding comfort in the presence of the children. One sunny afternoon, as they sat on the porch enjoying lemonade, Mr. Hargrove looked around, a content smile gracing his face. "You know, I didn't think I'd ever enjoy life outside these walls again," he said, his voice filled with warmth. "But you all have shown me that it's not so scary after all." The children beamed, their hearts swelling with happiness. They had turned a once lonely existence into something beautiful, a tapestry of friendship woven through care, understanding, and the simple act of reaching out. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the neighborhood, they all knew that the neighbor who never came outside had finally found his way back into the light.